Hello and welcome to the West Ham Breakdown with me, Jack Elderton, and my mate Callum Goodall. We're back.
Not said that in a while.
the dynamic duo. Look, we've all we've each been. I've been ill. Then you went away for Christmas, and then I'm going away again for the next game. So Darcy's going to be back on for the next podcast, and then we will be back to normal running as usual after that. But yeah, Cal, how are you? It's been a long time since we did one of these pods together, and unfortunately, we're covering a 4-1 Man City loss to Man City. So I don't think much has changed on the West Ham front since we were last chatting about our football team.
Sadly, not. New year, same. Seems to be the maybe that's the pod title. But yeah, no, I'm good, man. Christmas was good, New Year's was good, and yeah, just pleased to be back. But like I say, I would have preferred to have come back and dissected a win, but they seem to be hard to come by at the moment. So instead, we'll be dissecting another drubbing. Yeah,
Charlie's producer in the background, maybe same. Different year for the for the title of this episode. Look, we're going to break through today what happened in the Man City game. I think there were some positives to take away from it. We're also going to talk about things that didn't go so well. We'll talk a little bit about individual player performance, but we're going to focus a lot of that into extra time, which is the extra 30 to 45 minute helping of this podcast that you get that we record afterwards on Patreon, patreon.com/Analytics United. First 7 days free. Would really love to see you all over there. The community that we've built has been lovely to be a part of. It's been really great to see lots of people joining over the last few weeks. Loads of people getting on the Discord, chatting about West Ham. Really nice on a match day. Lots of stuff to chat about. We have loads of stuff that goes up on there. Player performance review. I do my player ratings. We've got Euro review for tier 2, where we look at players that we might be able to sign playing around Europe or players that are doing well around Europe. So yeah, loads of stuff, and that's without even speaking about the preview that goes ahead of each match, where we spoke actually about playing 44 against City, which is going to be relevant for this podcast. And then at the end of this episode, we're going to talk about basically solutions with the group that we have versus what we would have to do to invest to improve with the group that we might need to be able to play the style that we so clearly want to play under Julian Lopetegui, or want to play more generally as a club in a post-Moyes or in the post-Moyes era. But Cal, let's start at the kind of just at the Man City game level. And I think we can start with a couple of the positives, because it's been a really tough time at West Ham. It's not been a fun Christmas for us. It's not been a happy New Year. And so we should start with some of the positives. And I think in settled play from a defensive point of view, whacking out the 4-2-4 that we saw, it felt like I know this seems mad to say from a game that we've lost 4-1, but we're going to be able to explain how exactly that's happened, given these positives we're going to speak about in this section. It felt like we caught up with the rest of the league, and the way to defend against the 3-box-3 had finally arrived in Lopetegui's group. It seemed really good, and actually as a unit we defended really well when we were not pressing.
Yeah, crucially. Good distinction. But yeah, no, I would agree. And I suppose self-congratulatory trumpet, I guess, because the one thing that looked positive was the one thing we said we should try and do, because everyone else was doing it well. But yeah, I mean, as we've discussed in previous pods, in general conversation, the likes of Forest and how these people are able to sort of punch above their weight and punch up. And, you know, if you can't beat them, which clearly we've struggled to do this year, you've got to join them. Jack's nearly spat his water everywhere there. And yeah, no, it was pleasing to see. I think especially because in the preview that you and Darcy did, you talked about it, but caveated it by saying we don't expect to see this from Lopetegui. What we expect to see is this, and then we did actually see it. So that felt like a step in the right direction. But obviously, it exists within a certain set of circumstances that, when you zoom out, aren't all that great. But yeah, I think nice to start on a positive, and hopefully we do see more of it. And I think it should, in theory, assuming that the players that we have available now stay fit and continue to play together, start to function even more effectively, given this is really the first time we've seen it properly rolled out as a team.
You'd hope that, given the positives definitely in that first half, where I think we're probably unfortunate to go 2-0 down. I think that's clear for anyone who watched the game. We were pretty good had lots of good moments. I think with the dominant side in the first 15 minutes of the game, by far the better side. Even Pep said after the game that he was surprised and thought they were lucky that they didn't. They went 1 or 2-0 down after the first 15 minutes, and then they had some good moments of quality afterwards. Was very impressed, I think, with the second goal and the individual quality that they displayed there from multiple players, not just one player. And Savinho is someone that we will speak about. Of course, had an incredible game for Man City. But yeah, I think more broadly, defensively, we were really good in the moments where we weren't pressing. I think that structure really helps you to defend against the way that most teams are playing. So again, to crystallise this, we have been speaking about it over on Patreon on the preview pods, particularly about the importance of, or not the importance, but how successful 4-2-4 has been as a solution for the 3-box-3 that everyone is using in possession. Just to make that clear or explain how exactly that works, it gives you coverage of basically all the players in the centre of the pitch. So where previously lots of teams were rolling out 4-2-3-1, and we were doing that previously, you always have kind of a 3v4 in the centre of the pitch. Whereas if you play 4-2-4, you have your 2 central midfielders on the 2 number 10s, if you like, in the 3-box-3. Your 2 strikers, or your striker and your number 10, sit on the opposition double pivot, which in this game is Rico Lewis and Mateo Kovacic. So you can kind of mark all of those players, which are generally the most dangerous players that the 3-box-3 looks to get on the ball in space out of the game. You do concede a little bit of space out wide for the wingers, which you see in this game. Savinho getting on the ball in space, and the same on the other side. But the benefit there is that by positioning the wingers quite high, is you make it quite difficult for the 3 that are building up to actually access those passes out to the wide players. And you see that in, again, settled play, where we're not jumping out to press, they really struggled to access any of the front 5 in good situations. And generally, yes, there's a lot of time on the ball for Nathan Ake. There's a lot of time on the ball for Manuel Akanji. There's a lot of time on the ball for Josko Gvardiol. But as soon as De Bruyne receives it, he gets 1 touch and he's lost the ball. As soon as Haaland receives it, 1 touch and he's lost the ball. Foden receives it, maximum 2 touches, lost the ball. Savinho receives it, maximum again 2 touches and he's lost the ball. Savinho did very well, mind you, with those 2 touches a lot of the time to commit Soufal 1v1 on the outside. But again, in settled play, Soufal is then backed up by Todibo. He's got Soucek coming back to help him. He's got Kudus in there to help him. And a lot of the time, we're actually able to block those crosses into the box. And we conceded lots of corners from which we then defended really well as a unit. And they didn't actually create anything from those corners. So as a unit, we worked really well. And that system, that shape works really well to defend effectively against the dominant in possession system that most people are using in the Premier League. Hence what Cal said. Nottingham Forest are doing so well this season. They are probably executing this 4-2-4 better than anyone outside of the top 6, and the team that are executing the 4-2-4 defensively the best out of that big 6 unit are Liverpool, who are runaway leaders in the Premier League this season. So good to see the adaptation to that. It's taken way too long, and we know that. I don't want to land back on the negatives, but it's ridiculous that it's taken this long. But good to see finally a bit of a nod to what's happening in the league and how might we need to adapt to be successful based on what's happening in the league, rather than just bloody-mindedly, this is what we want to do, this is the kind of team we want to be, regardless of the tactical state of the division, regardless of what we're coming up against, regardless of how well it works. This was the first real, I think, we've seen other adaptations this season, but this was the first adaptation really looking at what's working for other teams and moving more towards that direction. So out of possession, some really positive things there. In possession, 4-2-4 or 4-4-2, what does that enable? Back to some counter-attacking, back to some dynamic use of the ball, back to moving up the pitch nice and quickly and generating chances in transition. And guess what? We looked really good, right? I mean, we were a final pass or getting the shot right away from scoring. Really, I mean, 3 or 4 away at Man City. I mean, Kudus could have had 2 in the opening 15 minutes. Soucek definitely should have scored from the cutback where Kudus got his decision right. Wan-Bissaka easily could have squared for Fulkrug or Kudus at the back post on one occasion. You've got 2 situations from which Paquetá could have scored. Fulkrug obviously gets his goal later in the game. We had loads of really good attacking situations, and the vast majority of them came from transition moments where we operated as a good counter-attacking team, which we know this group of players can do.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even it was a less obvious one, I suppose, because we weren't so deep. But even the goal, really, Alvarez instantly thinking the first thing he wants to do is play that ball through to Souček rather than sort of knock it about a bit in the middle of the park, which is something that I guess we've both really demanded more of from Alvarez. We've wanted to see it a lot more. We know he has that in his locker. We know he used to do it at Ajax, and for some reason it's just not really come to the fore at West Ham. So that was pleasing to see. But yeah, I think, as you say, I'm pretty sure we ended the match with more shots than City had anyway. I think we had 17 shots away at the Etihad, which is impressive.
Is it? I think more than double the shots that City had in the game. I'll just fact check myself on that. But I think seven shots or 7 of 10 shots on target for City. We had 4 of 17, so not quite double. But I mean,
still impressive.
7 more shots than City at the Etihad is great. Obviously, chance quality significantly better for City in the game, but that's a lot to do with the final actions from us and the choices we made.
Yeah, I think so. There were definitely moments. I mean, I think we had the first 3 shots of the game, right? And all of them really could have ended in a goal if we'd have made that final action right. I think the first one was difficult because on first viewing, I felt like Kudus had done the right thing to try and stand up his defender and go to the near post. But obviously, the closer to the near post you get, the thinner your angle becomes and the more difficult an opportunity it becomes. But having watched it back, I did wonder for a moment if it would have been difficult. But Frederik was making the run in wide open space. You just got to square it across, play it into his path, and it's a tap in. And it's those sorts of moments that, in possession, if we don't get right, it will be our undoing because they don't come around that often. And unfortunately, because they didn't go right, we've already talked about how well we did to limit City. But on the 2 chances that they did get, they got a lucky own goal because Savinho was causing problems for Somerville. And then on the one real occasion where we didn't defend the box especially well, Savinho puts in an absolutely unbelievable cross to the back post and Haaland scores it because that's the quality that City possess. So it really is a game of fine margins, none more so than when you're playing a team like Man City and when you're trying to rely on creating these sort of momentary chances in transition. And until we start actually putting them away with a bit more clinicality, I guess, in the final third, I'm not sure if that's a word, but it is now, we won't see the fruits of our labour, unfortunately. But as you say, as we wanted to start this with some positives, I think it does come back round to the fact that Kudus is a transition player at his best. And Somerville now, I think we saw glimpses of as well, his carrying in particular. I mean, he was an instrumental part in that first goal, right? Taking the back heel off Frederik and then playing it through. So yeah, some nice promising shoots, but as you say, likewise with the 4-2-4, as long as Lopetegui's still around, who knows if we're going to see it again. It might just be one of those games.
Yeah, first chance rather than the first goal would have been great if it was the first goal. And yeah, I think we should move on now. I'm glad you mentioned Somerville. We are going to loop back round to him, don't worry. But we should move on now to how exactly we managed to concede the number of goals that we managed to concede in a game where we've just said that out of possession, actually, we thought we did quite well. Goal kicks, Cal, they're quite important. They happen a lot in football. The way that you set up to press against them is really quite important. And we were an absolute disaster any time that Ortega got the ball, whether it was a goal kick or the ball at his feet, or whether he had picked the ball up, and whatever it was. When we went to press from a situation where they started with the goalkeeper, we were an absolute mess.
Yeah, it was chaos. It was chaos. It was far too easy. I think it just looked... I mean, it wasn't even, to my mind, limited just to the goal kicks, but this is the obvious one to bring out. But just complete sort of disconnect between the players. No one went together. No one really seemed to know who to be tracking. I know that City pose a more difficult threat than a lot of teams, particularly in their rotational play with, like, if you're assigned to mark the fullback, do you then follow the fullback into central midfield when he becomes a central midfielder? It does make it very difficult because you can see it on the pitch. There's moments where Somerville doesn't really know who to go with. There's moments where Alvarez doesn't know who to go with. But that's just not really okay.
There are definitely countless moments where Pakistan doesn't know who to go with.
Exactly. But yeah, like, it's all well and good for highlighting that, but that's not us saying that, oh well, it's difficult, forgive them. It's us saying what the fuck is going on at this part of the season where we still don't know how to track just general rotations. Every team in the Premier League is rotating these days. Every team is trying to play this way in some form. Arsenal are doing it all the way down to the bottom of the table, where you've got the likes of Ipswich still doing rotations with Amari Hutchinson and players like that. So it's not something that you just go, oh, well, 4 times a season we might come up against this, and yeah, it's going to be tricky, but it's only 4 times a season. It's every week. So there's no excuse really to not be able to at least show a glimpse of knowing what you're trying to do. And it was just painful. And again, what a terrible week for it to be so pointed as an example, because they'll just carve you open. And the goal, I think, where it's KDB comes out to sort of right wing back almost, plays it inside. Rico Lewis carries forward. No one seems to know who's doing what. Plays it into the feet of Haaland. Foden switch, boom, goal. It's from back to front in seconds.
Almost a carbon copy of the first goal, which obviously is unlucky in the way that it goes in, but it's the same. It's De Bruyne out to sort of right wing back, then inside into central midfield. No one picks him up. No one knows who's meant to go to him, who's meant to close him down. He gets to take, I think it's 8 or 9 touches in the centre of the pitch, completely unpressured, carrying the ball forward. No pressure at all, and then gets to switch the ball out to Savinho, which, I mean, it is just an unbelievable situation to find yourself in, from defending a goal kick to allow 1 or 2 passes later, De Bruyne in about 15 yards of space in the centre of the pitch, and Savinho 1v1 against Somerville, who, you know, out of all your defenders, is probably the one guy that you don't want to leave 1v1 against a winger with the quality that Savinho possesses. Yeah. So it's just an absurd situation to find yourself in, and an absurd situation to leave your players forced to defend, because, and this is a key element for me, goal kicks and how you press when the opposition's goalkeeper has the ball. That is your bread and butter work on the training ground. What are you doing? How are we defending as a team in this game? And actually, in the rest of the moments where it was kind of up to players to make individual decisions, up to players to react to situations that are happening on the pitch that you can't necessarily bake into how you coach the team. You've got a set 4-2-4. You know exactly. You have your typical triggers to press, bad touch or a backwards pass. That's when we're going to jump out. It didn't all go perfectly, but I will say the players did an amazing job for the most part at dealing with those situations. Defended really well as a unit. All the recoveries were really good when they got it wrong. Always found a way to get there if City did get through, to either clear the box. There was a moment where City got through on the right-hand side, cut it back across. Kilman manages to get just in front of Haaland to stop him from scoring. And then Somerville steps in front of, I think it's Savinho or De Bruyne, who's coming, it might be Foden, I don't know. Someone's coming in then to score, and Somerville steps in front and wins the ball. Wan-Bissaka defending the back post. Loads of situations where we've managed to deal with it. Kilman heading balls out of the box. I think we did really, really well as a team from those situations. And then when you're looking at how the team defended from goal kicks, which is what they should have been working on in the build up to this game, they don't seem to know what they're doing. Number one, and even if they did know what they were doing, and this is the crucial part for me, what they're doing doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So if we break into some of the sort of micro tactical elements, forgive me, I know this is something we do on the show and I shouldn't really apologize for doing it, but it's a bit dense and it's hard to capture on a podcast without having a tack board to show you exactly what I'm talking about. But we press to cut the pitch when we're doing this. So Fulkrug is often stepping up between Ake and the goalkeeper to make sure that Ortega has to pass to Akanji on City's right-hand side, our left-hand side, where Somerville, Wan-Bissaka and Paquetá are all stationed. Except we're doing that, but leaving Kudus man-to-man on the right-hand side out on Gvardiol. When teams defend in this way, if you're going to force the opposition to one side of the pitch, then you need to commit numbers to that side of the pitch to make sure that you have numerical, minimum equality, but probably superiority on that side of the pitch, so you've got a chance of winning it back high up the pitch. What you absolutely just do not do is you don't cut the pitch, invite them to play into the side where you have less players. Numerical inferiority. We were inviting them to play into a 3v2 over and over and over and over again, where Somerville and Paquetá are up against Rico Lewis, Kevin De Bruyne, and Manuel Akanji. How are they going to win that? They can't win that. That's not even if they did all the right things, made all the perfect right decisions. City have still got a spare man. They've got 3 players who are really fucking good on the ball. It's just completely bemusing why you would put them in that situation. I've got absolutely no idea at all. Didn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think that's the key element for me, is that as much as there have been lots of complaints about our players, and we spoke about this on the last podcast, we're saying, look at the players, we've got good players, we've got a good squad. You're just setting these guys up to fail. I mean, I'm sorry, there's no way that they can deal with that scenario. And I can't understand the logic. If you cut the pitch, commit your winger on the side that you're cutting it off into the centre of the pitch. Don't make a ridiculous compromise where you're still spreading all the way across the pitch, trying to cover your bases all the way across the pitch and have a 2v3 on either side of the pitch and then cut it in half. What's the point?
Yeah.
You're basically just taking Fulkrug out of the game from the start and defending with one less on either side. It's just completely ridiculous way to defend.
Yeah, and I think as well, I suppose before we end this section, just to bring it back around to another issue that we've had and we've discussed a lot throughout the season is defending with the ball. And this kind of, I guess it's the other side of the same coin, right? I think it's for their final goal where we're doing a nice bit of build-up, or maybe it's the third one, the tap-in, basically. We're doing a nice bit of build-up down on the right-hand side and deep area, a little bit, and I was like, oh, this is nice, little tippy-tappy, one-touch football playing out through the press. Then they win the ball and I zoom out and I'm like, where the is Wan-Bissaka? He's all the way on the other side of the pitch where we just can't access him because we're playing in such a small sort of, we've created a tiny area that we're going to try and dominate. But as you say, likewise, when you're out of possession, do it in possession as well. There's no use Wan-Bissaka being all the way over there. A, because we can't access him anyway, because there's absolutely no way that passing angle opens up when it's so congested. And B, have a bit of foresight. If we turn this ball over in this moment, which we are very prone to do because we are not a possession-based side yet, we are a transition side that are trying to play possession. Therefore, there are mistakes that will creep in. Kudus, lo and behold, misplaces his pass. It goes behind both Alvarez and Souček. All of a sudden, we're scrambling to try and get back into some sort of defensive structure. But you've got Wan-Bissaka holding the width on the other side of the pitch when no one is there. And Kilman's just stood in our own box on his own, trying to defend a Man City, what is essentially a counter-attack, a transition attack. Well, they've got 4 players in the box. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what benefit are you trying to gain from setting up in that way? It just didn't make any sense to me. And yeah.
I think I can forgive that more because I understand wanting to be able to have players on either side of the pitch when you're building up to make sure that you try and keep City spread wider and it's more difficult for them to defend. And if we break out in that situation and the pass is right ahead of Souček, then you have the switch out to Wan-Bissaka and then you've got a 3v1 or a 2v1 on the left side of the pitch, which is actually a really good situation for us to be in. What we can say from that's very similar to the stuff that we're speaking about out of possession, talking about pressing versus goal kicks, is that it's the same idealistic stuff that works theoretically that is not working in reality, either because the ideas themselves don't work, fundamentally couldn't work regardless of what players you put in, or because our players are not capable of executing at the level that would be required to get the benefits of doing these things. And to be 20 matches into the season now and still be talking about this idealistic stuff that clearly doesn't work on the pitch, clearly hasn't worked on the pitch, and to have not had really enough change there to acknowledge, well, okay, we probably can't do these things, we probably need to adapt more significantly. And there are micro adaptations, like here we're talking about 44. Great, there's an adaptation that works really well for a group of players, makes us much better out of possession. But you keep doing the same nonsense in other elements of the game. That means that you've lost the game 4-1, even though you've made the correct adaptation to give you a platform to win it. If you just made the adaptation wholesale across the board, might have won the match. Never mind drawn it, might have won the match. But because you've stuck steadfast to the same ideas in certain areas of the match, that's why we've lost it. I would put the fourth more down to an individual mistake, mainly because I think building up has been a lot better this season. And I think if you build up so conservatively concerned about where the opposition might win the ball, then you get into the same hole that we were in with David Moyes, where we just couldn't build up because our players were kind of operating from positions that was mainly focused around how would we defend if we lose the ball here, rather than how would we attack if we actually manage to build up here. And I think that is an important area for development for the team. But it is absolutely true that the same idealism exists in that context as it does out of possession, and that is kind of the root cause of a lot of our problems as a football team this season. We went a little bit long on that top section, and I said we were going to talk about Somerville a little bit and loop back around. We've left ourselves with about 5 minutes to do this, the whole middle section of the podcast. So we're going to have to zoom through. All I'm going to say is, Cal and Charlie are bastards. They've made me out to seem like some kind of massive Somerville hater. Look, I think there's obviously lots of room for development there, out of possession with big room for improvement. I think his final actions are still, even in this game, like he has a great game, but when he has his big chances, does he make the right choice? Does he put the ball in the back of the net? No, he doesn't. And I think that's still the next step for him to really be nailed on as a starter for West Ham. But this was a really good performance from him. We'll talk about most of the individual performances over on ET, but I had to reference to someone who's been made out to hate Crysencio Summerville when he plays really well. I have to come on the main pod and go, he's done great. I really enjoyed his performance. Brilliant, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was great. It was great, and it's what we need to see now that Bowen's going to be out for an extended period of time. There's an obvious window here where he can step up and really assert himself as a starter, and realistically, Bowen's not going to be back till the back end of the season at best, probably. So going into the summer, he could have put in, if he matches those levels of performance, he could be putting in a claim to have a starting berth going into the season after this. So yeah, I mean, if performances like this continue, it puts us in a great position, because again, if you get a 3-month evidence space of Somerville at this level, you can then start thinking about, well, maybe we can let Goodall go in the summer if an offer comes in, or maybe we can shift on someone else because we've got Somerville here. Whereas at the minute, based on what we'd seen thus far this season, I probably would have been less comfortable entertaining that conversation without then having a follow-up conversation of, okay, which winger are we going to buy to go and replace Goodall with the Goodall money? Because it looks like he could, for the first time, be in-house. So yeah, really, really pleased with it. I thought his ball carrying was a real asset for us in this game. Again, no surprise. We sit deep. It means he's got acres of space to carry into, and that maximises his strength. Which is great, which is something that we've said we probably need to see more of, maximising the strengths of the players that we actually have available. So again, another positive step in the right direction. But as you say, young player, still lots of scope for development, still lots of room for improvement. I do need to see those final actions come slightly more regularly, correctly. But yeah, hopefully he's sort of seizing this opportunity and he's sort of put his flag in the sand there, and performances are just going to go up and up from here.
I like the way that he worked out possession here as well. I think in the right moments, he dropped off to kind of make more of a 5 across the back line. If they got into situations where sitting in that 4-2-4 kind of shape or sitting in a 4-4-2 kind of shape would have made it too easy actually for Akanji to play out to Foden. So he made really good decisions in moments to kind of drop off and go with Foden. I actually think he did really well in the moments where we did jump onto some kind of pressing trigger and jump out as a unit. He was probably the most effective player in those moments. Unfortunate, I think, to get pulled up for a foul on Akanji when jumping out from that shape to win the ball. So I think he did really well in those moments, and it's really nice to be talking about him in a game where he's carried well, he's combined well, and he's worked really well out of possession. The next thing, of course, as we keep talking about with him, is we want to be talking about those 3 things and then saying, and that goal was brilliant, wasn't it? Yeah. And that assist was wonderful, wasn't it? And he's just not quite got that yet. He had his big chance, I think, the knockdown from Fulkrug, wasn't it? And he kind of just lost his balance at the crucial moment and skied it. And it's just that last little bit of composure that he needs to kind of get to the level that we need him to be at. But I think it's really good. Definitely a really good start point, good platform now from this game. And if he can, I hope that he does what Kudus hasn't done after the Brighton match, right? He was singled out. Kudus was singled out for praise after the Brighton game for how hard he worked, how well he played. And then since then has kind of fallen off a cliff again. If Somerville, after a really good performance like this, after having probably a little bit more of a difficult run over the last couple of months before this, can maintain this kind of level of performance, then it puts us in a really good position to cope over the next couple of months, however long it is, where we're missing Jared Bowen, who has obviously been probably has been our most important player this season, has been our best player this season. The last thing I want to do, and we did a lot of this in the top section, and I know we're almost out of time because we've kind of hollowed out this middle bit of the pod, is just double down on how well, even with all the change to the group that we saw in the summer, all the new players coming in, how well this unit, and I know there are still, lots of players that we've seen before starting in this match, but you've got Wan-Bissaka in there, you've got Todibo and Kilman in there, you've got Crysencio Summerville in there, Nicholas Fulkrug started as well. How well that group with so many new players did as a counter-attacking team, which I think sets us up really nicely for the back end of the pod, where we're going to go on to talk about how much change in terms of personnel, how much investment would be required to get the group to the level it needs to be at to be able to operate in the style that we've intended to play this season, versus how successful could this group be as a kind of bit more of a standard 4-2-4 mid-blocky team, which is what a lot of the league is doing this season to varying degrees of success, just kind of moving in line with the rest of the division, doing it to the best of our ability, and then buying ourselves some time to kind of over a longer period make the kind of changes to the group that we would need to be able to get to that level further down the line. So that's what we're going to come back to for the final section. If you want to hear more about individual performances, like I've said, that's over on Patreon, patreon.com/Analytics United, a 7-day free trial over there. We're going to be talking about Edson Alvarez in depth. Darcy's going to join us for that chat. Nicholas Fulkrug in real depth. I think there's some very interesting things to talk about with him. And then also Vladimir Sofal, and particularly Jean-Claire Todibo, and Konstantinos Mavropanos, and of course Mohamed Kudus as well in ET. So would love to see you over there. So to go on to talk about how much investment might be required to get this group to the level it needs to be at to play that style that we so clearly have wanted to play for quite a long time now, whether it was the jump to Pellegrini or the jump under Moyes with the 120 odd million or however much it was spent on Gianluca Scamacca, Lucas Paquetá, Thilo Kehrer, Flynn Downs, Alphonse Areola, Maxwell Cornet, Emerson, and potentially some others that I'm a knife guard that I might be missing. Or again, the jump this summer with, again, massive investment and Julian Lopetegui coming in. How much further investment would be required to get us there versus where we are with the current group and what we could do with the current group? And I think this is a nice time to be talking about this as well, because managerial change might be on the horizon. Graham Potter looks most likely as the guy that's lined up to replace Julian. And I think, as much as I think Potter would be able to do more with the tools that we have right now, there isn't that much of a stylistic shift based on what we saw Potter do at Brighton and then at Chelsea from where we are right now under Lopetegui, is there?
No, I think a lot of it will be the same. I think Potter, like Lopetegui, or Lopetegui in theory, we've not yet seen it in practice, sure. But they both clearly prefer to have a lot of the ball. They both prefer to play a possession-based style of football and sort of do their defending that way. I think in the Premier League, Potter has had more success with that at Brighton and to a lesser extent, but still to some extent, I would argue, at Chelsea. I think he got short shrift a little bit at Chelsea. I think he was unfortunate to join when he joined and all the chaos that was going on there. Lopetegui obviously has struggled to have similar success. But yeah, I think in terms of the principles, it wouldn't be particularly dissimilar in terms of the formations that it lines up on and which players you're likely to rely on to create chances and that sort of thing. It probably would be slightly different. I think Potter would more willingly switch between different shapes each game, depending on who we play. But ultimately, yeah, it's still going to rely very heavily on wanting to build out from the back, wanting to sort of bait the press, probably to an even greater extent under Potter, I would imagine. And all of this is to say that personnel-wise, it would demand a very similar profile across the pitch. And that ultimately has been kind of our undoing so far this season, is that profile-wise, we don't necessarily have enough players that are comfortable playing this style of football.
Let's talk about that then. So what is required with this group to be able to move to that style, whether it's a Lopetegui or a Potter or anyone else, to move to that more possession dominant style? I think I can start with the first one and you can move us on to some of the ones that follow. Mm-hmm. Very obvious for me as goalkeeper. Yeah. Even in this game against Man City, Alphonse Areola did a much better job, I would say, than in previous games in build-up. But he still tonked the ball off the pitch twice under no pressure in deep build-up. So I think it's really clear that one of the first things the group would need would be a goalkeeper that's a lot more comfortable on the ball and a goalkeeper that can be much more aggressive as a sweeper as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then I think also comfortable on the ball, both sort of under pressure as part of the build-up unit, but also a much more reliable distributor as well. I think with Potter, a lot of it, I want to be careful not to just get sucked into a Potter debate here, because let's talk about a possession-based manager, whoever that might be. I think it's key to have that sort of goalkeeper who's going to play those short passes into the centre-backs or can access the full-backs very regularly, very accurately, but also to have decent long distribution in their locker as well to sort of bypass the press when it becomes a little bit too hairy. And at the minute, I think that's really the biggest problem with Areola, and to a lesser extent, but still to some extent, Fabianski. I think neither of them really are super reliable in terms of accessing sort of players in the middle or even final third. Fabianski definitely better than Areola, but again, if you're going to really commit to this style, you go out and you just find someone who has proven that they can function in this system. There's plenty of teams playing similar systems across Europe, so it shouldn't be that hard to find someone that can do it. And then I guess you just filter by all of those and go, who's got the best shot stopping now out of you lot? And then it's as simple as that, really, and doing a bit more scouting, obviously, beyond that. But I think that would be the most obvious one. But unfortunately, it's not the only one. I think there's quite a few positions.
And it's expensive too. Yeah, it's expensive to find that kind of keeper. I was going to say as well, like, you know, keepers like, I don't want to be really harsh on one individual, but like Robert Sanchez probably wouldn't have the career that he's had if ball playing wasn't so valued at the teams that he's been at. I mean, his kind of big attribute, even though he's struggling now at Chelsea in this element, his big attribute that he often showed at Brighton was just how kind of impervious to pressure he was, which has become a problem now at this stage of his career, because he makes silly decisions because he's so kind of unflappable, never gets stressed at all. But yeah, it's not easy to. It might be easy to find that kind of keeper because of the way that lots of teams are playing, but it's going to cost you a lot more than kind of just a pure shot stopper keeper, which is the mold that we have right now with Fabianski and Areola. Those two guys are kind of. They have the careers they have because they're good shot stoppers. I mean, Fabianski this season, I think, is still. I mean, I'm desperately trying to pull the data up in the background as you were talking. That I think he is still top this season for per 90 post shot XG over performance. So just raw shot stopping in the data, he's top of the Premier League.
Christ, where would we be if he wasn't in goal
this season? At a plus 0.39 per game over performance. That's like. Basically every 3 games, a bit more than 1 every 3 games, he's denying a goal that according to the data are more likely to go in, or saving an extra goal based on the quality of his shot stopping. So I think goalkeeper, clear one of them. I think the next most obvious one is number 6. I mean, Guido and Edson have just been killed by Stone. I mean, Edson particularly has just been killed stone dead by the way that we're trying to play. He's gone from probably being one of our stronger players last season, definitely had a run in the season where he was one of our best players. I think he still probably would be in the top 5 for last season, top 5 best players, to being the clearest weak point in the squad, frankly, this season. Not winning duels, can't cover the ground that's being asked of him in transition. Lots of situations in the second half against City where, you know, they lump the ball onto Haaland, or it's De Bruyne trying to break through. He's protecting kind of the edge of the box. It's his job to mop things up in there to win duels, even if he concedes a foul. And he's just getting beaten in those duels, either for pace or just like losing tackles, losing duels against dribblers.
I think even was the first goal. Obviously it was an own goal, but there was a header that he could have won on the edge of the box, and he just pulled out of it completely. I was like, "Come on, bro, that's your job." Like,
yeah, exactly. So I think he's really struggling. So you need to get someone that can cover ground much more effectively than either. Him or Guido do. Again, expensive, not an easy profile to find, especially given the fact that you want them to be good on the ball as well. Teams are paying over 100 million for these kinds of guys.
We sold one of them.
It's not they're not easy to find, and kind of everyone wants them, so that makes it much more complicated. I think again, central midfield. So even ahead of that, Tomáš Souček has actually had really quite a good season this year. He's not the kind of guy you want in that kind of team, in that kind of structure. He's playing really because he's the most reliable midfielder in that unit. He's the guy that you can reliably hang your hat on to say, well, he'll win his duels. And he might get us a goal as well. He got the assist in this game. So I think that's why he's in the team. He's not really that kind of player. And I think for for a number 8 in that kind of team, you can't really be carrying someone in possession. And for a lot of this game, what did he really offer in build-up? What did he really offer from a progressive point of view? It's what we've been speaking about with Soucek for a very long time. We both love him. I think we're clear about that. But for that kind of manager, he's not really the profile of midfielder that they're looking for. So someone to tick things over in the middle, someone who progresses at a high volume, but someone who doesn't introduce too much risk in doing that, and also is reliable defensively, because we've often tried to play Paquetá in that kind of role in possession this season, or Soler in that kind of role in possession this season. Paquetá too risky, loses the ball too often in those areas, because he's more of a number 10, frankly. We always thought he was an 8. We always wanted him to be an 8, but he's proven, I think, over this year so far that actually he needs to be further forward, because his relationship with risk is just not good enough to play in a deeper area. He's also just not good enough defensively. And then Soler, relationship with risk is much better, but it's just, I mean, I think he's in the bottom 1% of midfielders in the Premier League for dueling, for tackling dribblers this season. So obviously you can't play him as a defensive midfielder. So again, another very expensive, I would say, kind of profile to look for. And then left back is obvious. I think Emerson, average, reliable performer when you need your left back to either be a massive help to you in build up, as kind of like Rico Lewis is for Man City, or someone that careers forward and is that overlapping threat and offers masses as an overlapper. You just need so much more than what Emerson offers. So huge amounts of money, I think. When you're looking at it across those 4 positions, you're probably looking at north of 100 million. You might even be looking at more towards 120, 130 million, especially in the way that West Ham do things. Let me stress that. We buy for now, right, at West Ham. We have our own issues with that, and we've spoken about that on the pod countless times. But West Ham do buy for now, the vast majority of the time, especially when it's key players that are going to come into the first 11 like this. We buy players that are ready to go and are doing it at a good level already. So if you're looking for a 6 that's ready to go to come in for a top 10 Premier League side, that's a lot of money, regardless, really. Contrast that with the system that we played in this match, remove the high intensity pressing against goal kicks and all that, and just say you just play a 4-2-4. You can continue to build up in the way that we did more effectively in this game. So you don't have to be just pure dynamic. We're moving the ball forward at 900 miles an hour every time we get it. But when you do win the ball back, that is what you look to do. You look to transition aggressively and work as a counter-attacking team in those moments. How much needs to be done, Cal? I mean, a lot of the group is already there, right?
Yeah, 100%. It made me laugh at the weekend, actually. Well, it didn't, because it was a painful loss, but it was funny to see Moyes sat in the stand, probably looking down at the pitch going, where was this squad when I was here? Where are all these players that I would have loved? You gave me Naya for Gerd, and I could have had Max Kilman. What's all this about? He's probably sat there going, the things I could have done if you'd have just given me a few more of these players. So I thought that was quite funny. But yeah,
he'd still be playing 4-2-3-1, mind.
Well,
rinsed through the middle.
Yeah, this is it. But yeah, it just made me chuckle. But yeah, I think, as you say, a lot of the players are here. Somerville has shown what a threat he can be as a dynamic ball carrier. Kudus, we don't need to talk about that. I think Frocka can exist in this system in a very different way to Antonio, but still as
in a Chris Woody kind of way.
Yeah, exactly. And then your defence is perfectly made for it, really. As you say, if you upgrade the left back, I think because of how much you want from him, if we fully lean into this, centre backs wise, you're absolutely fine. I think we've said a lot this season that we've probably got the most premium centre back partnership for this type of football outside of the top 6, I would say. Whether that's Todibo, Mavropanos, and Kilman, either one of those right-sided centre-backs you could take. They're both really good ball players that can be, on their day, dominant in ground duels and aerial duels. So, yeah, I think, it's perfectly made for it. But the issue you run into is, as we always will, which is why we're trapped in this cycle, is you end up back. It feels like you end up back where you were, right? It's like, oh, well, why are we going back to a counter-attacking system again? It almost feels like the club are admitting defeat, which is why I worry that Sullivan will never really lean into it.
But I think the important thing to understand here is that the lesson that we need to learn is when we've tried to leap from A to B in one window 3 times, it's backfired pretty horribly. And it's not that we're moving in the wrong direction. I think we are trying to move in the right direction.
Just slower.
I just think we need to buy ourselves a little bit more time to do it. I think in that interim period, you can be a 4-2-4. That doesn't make you a captain. We're not sitting as a 5-4-1, block everything out, counterattacks alone. We're not sitting in a really low block 4-2-3-1, conceding all of the space. That's not what we did in this game.
Well, as you said, Liverpool are doing it, right? They're not.
Liverpool are doing it. Exactly. You know, it's just sensible. It's just a sensible approach to how to defend in the Premier League as it is right now. Who is pressing really intensely in the Premier League? All out intensity with all out intensity in the Premier League right now. Man City in moments have done that this season. They've fallen off a cliff.
Yep.
Partly because of that. Tottenham have done that this season. They're really struggling. Partly, in large part, because of that. A lot of the league has taken a slightly more reserved approach to defending. That doesn't make every team in the league a counter-attacking team. It's just a more sensible way to defend against the 3-box-3. It doesn't open up huge spaces and leave yourself exposed in bad areas against against good players in transition. So I think let's be clear about that. It's not reversing all the way to where we were. It's taking one step back to take 2 steps forward. Yeah. And I think that's the next thing that the football club needs to do. It needs to fall in line a little bit with the rest of the league. I think we've got good players within that kind of structure to be successful. Not in a bottom 10 way, actually in a break the top 8 way. I think we can do that with the group of players we have right now. Yep. A couple of extra pieces. I think we do probably need to add a central midfielder into the group, at least have a type in there who by splits your Lucas Paquetá and your Carlos Soler and your Edson Alvarez, Guido Rodriguez, Thomas Soucek, dual winning, not a huge amount on the ball. Guido Rodriguez good at resisting pressure, but not really good at progressing. Need to have someone who's defensively secure and can move the ball forward for you in that group, kind of regardless of what system you play. The big thing for me is that instead of that needing to be a jump now, we're playing this aggressive system, we're playing 3-box-3, we're pressing, and therefore we need to spend 60 million on that guy because he needs to be ready to do that at the maximum level right now. If you go to a bit of a 4-2-4, a bit more reserved, you can spend 15 to 20 mil on that guy, and you can give him 2 to 3 seasons to get up to the level that you need, so that when you do make the full jump, the full send, commit to playing that way, then they're ready for you. They've had their time to adapt. They've had their time to adjust. They've had their time to get to the level. And I think the big thing that I want to tack this on at the end as well, that West Ham make a mistake about with this, is the idea that if you spend loads of money on players that are ready for now, they will definitely be ready for now. How many examples at the top end of the division are there of Premier League teams spending 100+ million on players that take 18 months to get to the level that they need them to be at, even though they spent masses of money on them? Enzo Fernandez is a great example. I think of a player that massive amounts of money was spent on. Moises Caicedo as well. Massive amounts of money was spent on to get Chelsea immediately up to the level that they needed to be at. It's taken a while for those guys to get to the level that Chelsea need them to be at.
Most Man City players. yeah,
exactly. So I think that's another part of it. But yeah, there are so many examples lower down the division. Kevin Schade, quite a big expenditure for Brentford. Didn't really do much for quite a long time, but now you're starting to see, that was worth it.
Damsgaard as well.
It was worth waiting for that. Mikkel Damsgaard, exactly the same. Carlos Baliba, the same at Brighton. Wasn't there straight away, comes into the team better than Yves Bissouma. Took a while, but now you look at him and you think, it was worth them waiting that time. And they didn't have to go and spend 40 million. Oh, that didn't go right. Well, we'll go and spend another 40 million in the same position. We'll just buy the one guy, give him the time to come up to the level. And I think by playing a style or implementing a strategy that puts a lot less pressure on the group week in, week out, you can give younger players a little bit longer to get up to the level. So it's a better long-term strategy for the team financially and for the team to get to where it wants to be in the future, while simultaneously being a better strategy to be able to compete right now. And for that reason, it's kind of better on for all fronts. And I think it's definitely the way that the club needs to move forward from this point. That was very impassioned delivery. But yeah, I just think it's it's really clear that those are the lessons that need to be learned. It needs to stop being this binary idea of you're either a David Moyes, Sean Dyche, Sam Allardyce team, or a former Real Madrid manager coming towards their at the end of their time as a top manager in the Premier League type of team. Actually, maybe the best place to land is somewhere in the middle of those two, and then build over more time, and particularly as well for your people like Tim Stighton, for people who are working on kind of the scouting side. And there has been a lot of development on that side of the club over the last few years, a lot more investment in the infrastructure, a lot more investment in being able to operate at a higher level as a team that can scout players. Can start to see some of the benefits of that. You won't see many of the benefits of that if you're still shopping in the same pool all the time, and there's kind of like 3 guys you can go for in any position, because they have to be doing it at a really high level, and they also have to be at a club where you can definitely sign them and they would want to come to West Ham, which is not really a massive market. It's the same disaster that Everton fall into all the time. It's a really small market that you're kind of scrapping within for players that you're not always entirely sure are going to be exactly right for you. Whereas the opportunities are just so much broader. There's a vast opportunity if you step back and say, sign a couple of years younger. Maybe we have to sign 2 or 3 or maybe 2 rather than just a 1, and hang our hat on 1, and then give them a bit of time and see if they can come up to the level that we need them to be at. You would see the benefit of having all these extra people around the club so much more doing things in that way, I think.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, we've long time been advocates of this. I think ever since we started, really, we suggested West Ham should sort of adopt this sort of model. I think the only difficulty really that makes our situation slightly different to Brighton and Brentford's, unfortunately, is that every time we seem to be in this situation, it's because we're coming from a position of underperformance, and therefore that's how you fall into the trap of, well, we need to buy someone to come in now because all the players that we're replacing haven't been good enough. Whereas I think for Brighton's and Brentford's, they're sort of not necessarily in a position of overperformance anymore, because this is what we've come to expect of them and they're trying to break into Europe, etc. But they're not in that sort of position where, well, we're a wannabe top 6 club and now we're 15th, so we need to right all these wrongs. They're kind of always in that nice, like, okay, things are going well now, so let's just add a little bit more to this recipe. But that's our own doing, right? And I think you kind of really just need to slam the brakes on and have a bit of a realignment of, okay, well, actually, where are we? Not just constantly chasing your own tail and never actually getting to the end goal. I think there probably just has to zoom out and go, okay, it hasn't worked, but we don't need to immediately right this wrong because that hasn't worked previously. What we should do actually is just change our approach entirely, accept maybe a 1 or 2 year step back, because we respect that this is bigger than just a 1 season, 1 window change. And I think you have to commit the whole way, right? You can't try and half-ass it. It's about a complete structural, cultural realignment within the club for a long-term gain.
I think the key thing as well is it's a step back stylistically, but it's not a step back in terms of performance and result on the pitch. I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is we've been here before. The platform's okay. You don't need to throw it out.
Yeah.
Like last time, every time we've done this, we've just thrown it out straight away. Like Haller in, out. Felipe Anderson in, out.
Scamacca.
Gianluca Scamacca in, out again. I think, right, let's work with this group this time. Get them in a structure that can help them to be effective as a top 10 competitive Premier League team, which they are more than capable of being. Let me be absolutely clear. They are this group is more than capable of being that. And then build the layers in the background over a few years that then get you into a position where you can now go and smash that top 6, top 7 equation again at that point. That's the key thing. It's not that you've got to reverse all the way back and go, right, well, we're down at the bottom of the league and, we're just going to have to buy a bunch of young players and hope that we can build over time and we just sack these guys off because we've made all of these mistakes. No, keep the guys and let those young players that you bring in operate as the second choice, as the backups for a few years. And then when they're coming up to the level, that's when you can make your leap. When you've got stuff in your squad already. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every time we've made this decision before, we've made the leap because the squad isn't there. So the squad's not there to do this anymore. It's so bad at doing ancient British pragmatism. It's so bad at this. We might as well take this opportunity to whack 150 million in and leap all the way from here to our end goal. Do that over time. And do that when you've got the group already there to operate halfway between, so you can then build the layers. So when you make the leap, it's not 150 million, it's just the last piece.
It's like on
7 of the 11 pieces.
What's that game? Have you ever tried to build an ancient wonder on Civilization when you don't have any of the technology? It takes hundreds and hundreds of weeks, but as soon as you build all the tech first, it only takes 2 weeks, and then you've built it. So
what a reference to end the podcast on. I'm sure Charlie's going to be loving that in the background. Okay, well, thank you for tuning in to this week's West Ham Breakdown. Thank you, Cal, for moving things around this week. I know it's been a bit of a challenge to do things at the last minute, but much appreciated. We will see you next week, where I think it'll be Cal and Darcy to discuss the game against Aston Villa. And if you want to see us before, again, patreon.com/Analytics United. There's going to be Analytics United. Sorry, there's going to be loads of stuff coming out over there over the next few days. Whether that's player ratings, Euro review, previews for the Aston Villa match, pre-match pack, loads and loads of stuff, and some exciting transfer stuff to come soon as well. That's coming in the next few days. So, yeah. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.